Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about naval combat in Total War Warhammer 40K. Will Creative Assembly do it? When will they do it? Will it be available at launch? Will it be available later on? Regardless, I think this particular topic is a crucial one for Warhammer 40K Total War, because if you look at the lore, if you look at the setting, naval combat plays an important role. Now, sure, some people will give arguments with respect to the IP rights holders. I think if you look at it from Games Workshop's perspective with regards to 40K Total War, they actually want it to be good. They are betting the farm, and then some, on this project because Total War Warhammer was significant, so much so that it brought back interest in the fantasy setting, and they are doing the old world as a result of it, direct result of it. So with 40K Total War, Creative Assembly and Games Workshop have every reason to want to do it. Now, of course, the problem is resources. How many people does Creative Assembly have in the company working on it? How do they do it? I think they should avoid Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. Not that it's a bad game, but one, the actual ships there are too small. I mean, you look at Empire War. Empire War, the ships, the Star Destroyers actually feel like Star Destroyers. Whereas you look at, you know the lore of 40K ships, you know that the smallest ships, the destroyers and frigates and corvettes, whatever, they're the size of aircraft carriers. No, they're much bigger than aircraft carriers. And if you've ever seen an aircraft carrier up front, up close, or a battleship up close, you will understand they're pretty massive. Those are bigger. They're the size of skyscrapers. And you play Battlefield Gothic Armada 2, and then in that particular game, they just feel like these puny ships. Like, Empire War did it. Like, fighters felt like fighters. You could zoom in, you could have cinematic mode. But then you looked at the situation from fleet combat perspective. Icons helped. We have icons in Total War. Apologies for that one. We have icons in Total War. We could use that. We could use like some kind of cinematic mode. And what we have been told by people like Chapter Master Valrak is that Creative Assembly is at least looking to do it. How exactly they're going to do it, unknown, unclear at this particular time and place. But they are looking to do it. In fact, what Chapter Master Valrak did mention is that they were actually looking to do a World War I Total War game, and they wanted to have dogfights between fighters. The reason we might not have space combat then, if we consider all available data that's publicly online, keep in mind I have no sources in Creative Assembly on any of these details, I just follow what's posted online. But if we consider that specific argument, we can then conclude the following. Creative Assembly probably does want to do space combat, but they haven't figured out the dogfighting aspect. And that's where Empire War is really good as a template. Obviously, it's not perfect, and I know people want to pretend it is. It's not a perfect game. It has a lot of issues. I believe the ground combat situation is much further along than space combat, but I also believe Creative Assembly would not have shown ships so prominently in the trailer and also in the roundtable discussion or the art if they weren't planning on doing something with it. Because you could just consider ships as bases. Sure, Space Marines will probably work like that, but then you have to consider the fact that if a developer doesn't want to do something that they know will give them backlash, they generally will try and avoid pointing something out. So they're not going to tease ships if they're not planning on doing ships in an important way. And keep in mind that art they showed also showcased weapons on those ships. So they're not just going to be orbital bombardment platforms. Maybe at first it will just be a question of auto-resolve only naval combat, though that would not work so well from my view. But ultimately, when we consider the situation, Creative Assembly probably is aware of all of these. They're not amateurs. They know what they're doing in a lot more ways than people think. At least they have devoted a lot of significant resources. So has Games Workshop. So have other people, Sega, especially, they've devoted significant resources towards this game, because this is ultimately what matters. Sega is the company that's responsible for how much, in terms of financial resources, 40K Total War gets. Not the developers at Creative Assembly, not the people in Horsham. The people in Japan are. And they're betting the farm on this. If it fails because it underdelivers or because things aren't going so well, if Creative Assembly wants to keep it a narrow vision because they can't figure out, well, that's not going to look so good for Sega, I believe. Especially after, Hyenas and other issues Creative Assembly has had, like the triple disaster, I'd call it, of Hyenas, Shadows of Change, and Pharaoh. Because it was a triple disaster. The triple entente, if you will. Interesting how that lines up perfectly well. So, this is an important thing for Creative Assembly to do right. Now, keep in mind, it is important that they also keep Warhammer 3 working, and it is important they do naval combat. I think the most important aspect of it is not how naval combat or ground combat are going to work in isolation as systems, but how are they going to connect to one another. Like things like boarding space stations, boarding ships, because remember, they are freaking massive. I mean, if they want to do naval combat and have it auto-resolve, but then allow you to find manually, just allow us to do ship boarding actions, maybe with some army abilities on the side. Or maybe we are finally at the point where that Total War engine can support simultaneous battles across multiple theaters. Like you could have a space battle in space happening, slower pace, ships moving slowly, all that, and then you have a ground combat battle situation, or a boarding action, or all three of them at the same time. Different pacing, of course. The ground combat and boarding action could be the same speed, of course, they should be. The naval combat aspect should be slower. Or you could have a battle that's being auto-resolved on a certain timer. Like, okay, let's say you don't want to fight the space battle, right? You could just set it to auto-resolve but intervene to give certain orders because you don't want to, worry about it, and just let the stats speak for themselves once you give certain orders, dependent on your actions. And maybe your actions there, in terms of like certain ship actions, could tip the scales. Like if you ram a ship, especially as the Imperial Navy, it could definitely tip the scales in favor of winning there. And if you win there, you get orbital bombardment capability. If you have targeting beacon on the ground, maybe, or sometimes you could send targeting beacon if you've cleared the enemy fleet from space, so you don't need a ground beacon. There are many complexities involved in the system and how it could work, but that is my personal idea on how Creative Assembly could handle some of these things. And I think maybe they are aiming for something like that. That's the reason 40K Total War, they haven't released many details about the game and why they have devoted the vast bulk of their development efforts towards it. Because, again, Sega, Games Workshop, CA themselves have invested heavily towards this game. This is not a cheap effort. This is not a small indie company. We're talking here probably on the order of hundreds of millions of dollars of assets, if you will, invested in ensuring that this game works. Development salaries, technology, a new engine, all of it coming at once. That is going to be expensive, far more expensive than Hyenas was. That's why this game is the one that will decide the future of Creative Assembly, and why they should be careful on how they handle it. But be careful, but also be bold. Be careful, be bold, understand what people are talking about, read the lore, but don't be so tied to the lore that you ignore the fact that it's ultimately still a game that needs to be played. Oftentimes, when I see Creative Assembly talking about certain things, it's like, oh, we really want to do this character. We found it interesting in the lore. But they tend to ignore how is that character or that ship or that unit actually going to add to the gameplay. Because we've seen with Warhammer 3, oftentimes, they do something that looks cool on paper, but just because it looks cool on paper does not mean it plays well. And that is one of the fundamental issues, because from what I know at least, a lot of developers in Creative Assembly don't spend a lot of time playing Warhammer 3, for instance. Which is a problem. They might think they don't need to because they have experience in game development, they built their game, but here's the thing. if you're developing something, you may want to play it oftentimes enough and doesn't matter what difficulty. Like, there's value from people who play on lower difficulties. There's value from people playing on higher difficulties. I personally don't believe in difficulty levels. I think the game should be organic enough and dynamic enough to favor, like, easier campaigns, easier missions, harder ones. And maybe that's the best way 40K Total War could handle things. That's all I had to say. Losing my voice here. That's all I had to say. Christine here signing out. If you guys appreciated this specific video, consider throwing a donation on PayPal or Patreon. Would be greatly appreciated, given all the delays and all the issues we've had. It's been a rough time for me as a creator, and for many other Total War creators. In fact, I think a lot of people are going through some rough stuff, so yeah, I do know what that sounds like, but would still be greatly appreciated. Things have been pretty hectic of late over here, so stay tuned. Christine signing out.